Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and greetings to everybody and also to Dr. Fahmi. So my name is Muhammad Amin bin Azhar. Today I will be presenting for the subject Engineering in Society on the topics of engineering economy. So first, let us go through to the introduction to engineering economics. So what it is actually mean by engineering economy? Engineering economics is a social science concerned with description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and service. Also, economics engineering is a collection of mathematical techniques that simplify economic comparisons. Economics engineering involving formulating, estimating, and evaluating the economic outcomes. So that's all for introduction to engineering economics. Next, we will go through details in subtopic for macroeconomics and microeconomics. So what it is actually means by microeconomics and macroeconomics. So actually economics is broadly divided into two different categories, namely microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is the study of specific segments and markets of an economy. It looks at the issue like consumer behavior, individual labor market, and theory of firms. And on the other hand, macroeconomics is the study of the whole economy. It looks at the aggregate variable such as aggregate demand, national output, and inflation. So we will take a look in further detail for microeconomics. So microeconomics and macroeconomics have its own different meaning. So for microeconomics studies individual economic units, and it is primarily deals with individual income, output, price of goods, etc. Microeconomics also focuses on overcoming issues concerning the allocation of resources and price discrimination. It also accounts for factors like the demand and supply of a particular commodity. It also offers a picture of the goods and services that are required for an efficient economy. It also shows the goods and services that might grow in the future. Microeconomics also helps to print out how equilibrium can be achieved, and it also focuses on issues arising due to price variation and income levels. So we will take a look at the example of microeconomics. So these are the examples of microeconomics. First, price determination of a particular commodity. Second, consumer equilibrium. Third, output generated by an individual organization. And lastly, individual income and savings. So how does this differ from macroeconomics? Now we will look into microeconomics and see what it actually means. So macroeconomics studies a nation's economy as well as its various aggregates. Next, it is the study of aggregates such as national output, income as well as general price levels. Macroeconomics focuses on upholding issues like employment and national household income. It is account for the aggregate demand and supply of a nation's economy. Macroeconomics helps ensure optimum utilization of the resources available to a country. It also helps determine the equilibrium levels of employment and income of the nation. And lastly, The primary component of the macroeconomics problem is income. So we will look at the example of the microeconomics. This is the list of example of macroeconomics. First, it is the national income and savings. Second, general price level. Third, aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Fourth, the poverty. And lastly, rate of unemployment. So that's it for the macroeconomics and microeconomics. After that, we will go through fundamental concept of demand, supply, and price. So what does actually mean by supply and demand fundamentals? So supply and demand are the fundamentals of economics. Supply is a fundamental economic concept that describes the total amount of a specific good or service that is available to consumers. Meanwhile, demand is an economic principle that describes a consumer's desire and willingness to pay a price for a specific good or service. Holding all other factors constant, an increase in price of a good or service will decrease demand and vice versa. So we will look further details into what actually mean by demand. So what is actually demand? Demand is how much quantity of a product or service is desired by buyers. Demand quantity, amount of a product people are willing to buy at a certain price. Demand relationship, relationship between price and quantity demand. So there are factors that affecting demand. What are they? So the quantity demanded of any good is the amount of the good that buyers are willing and able to purchase. The given conditions include: first, price of the good; second, income and wealth; third, prices of substitutes and complements; fourth, population; fifth, preferences or tastes; and lastly, expectation of future prices. So after that, we will go through into what is actually mean by supply. So what is supply? Supply is a fundamental economic concept that describes the total amount of a specific good or service that is available to consumers. So there are many factors affecting supply. Let's take a look at it. So these are the list of factors that affecting the supply. First is the price. As price increases, firms have an incentive to supply more because they get extra revenue income from selling the goods. Second, decrease in cost of production. This means business can supply more at each price. Lower costs could be due to lower wages, lower raw material costs. Third is more firms. An increase in the number of producers will cause an increase in supply. Fourth is the investment in capacity. Expansion in capacity of existing firms or building a new factory. Fifth, related supply. An increase in supply of a related good. Example, beef and leather. Next, weather. Climatic conditions are very important for agriculture products. Next, technological improvements. Improvements in technology. Example, computers reducing firm costs. Next, lower taxes. Lower direct taxes. Example, tobacco tax, VAT, reduce the cost of goods. And last but not least, government subsidies. An increase in government subsidies will also reduce the cost of goods. Example, train subsidies reduce the price of train tickets. So that's all for factors affecting supply. What about the price? Let's take a look what actually mean by price. So what is price? Price is the amount of money that has to be paid to acquire a given product. It is also a measure of value, indicating the amount and number of people willing to pay for a particular product. Price also acts as indicators of the strength of demand for different products and enable producers to respond accordingly. So after that, we will look further into the subtopic for law of supply and demand. So what are law of supply and demand? So actually, the law of supply and demand is the theory explaining the interaction between the supply of a resource and the demand for that resource. The law of supply and demand defines the effect, the availability of a particular product, and the desire or demand for that product has on price. Generally, a low supply and a high demand increases price, and in contrast, the greater the supply, the lower the demand, the lower the price tends to fall. So, in order to understand more about law of supply and demand, I have presented a video for a better understand. Let's take a look at it.
I'm going to ask you a weird question. What was the demand for cars in year 1120? Someone could answer without any hesitation, none. There was no cars at the time. However, imagine following situation. If you were standing next to road and asking every single horse rider in 1120, would you like to have a vehicle that will let you move around much faster? You could travel up to 1000 kilometers per day in comfortable way. Majority of the riders, except from a few horse riding enthusiasts, would say, "Of course, I would. It would save me time and effort." I will dare to say that demand for cars existed ever since the first man traveled by land for the first time. Of course, it was unspoken demand because no one was able to name a car as a solution to his transportation problems. But surely everyone wanted to make their travels more effective and efficient. It was only supply that was missing. Nowadays, we can hear from mainstream economists that we need to increase demand, which is not high enough. However, it is worth to remember that people's demand is unlimited. We as human beings always want to make our lives easier, to have more time and live our lives in a more convenient way. There is always a demand for goods and services that are going to help us to satisfy our needs. Therefore, we must find someone who is going to provide us with those. We need supply for our demand. We are going to show this on a simple story. Mark, who was a pencil producer, operated on a market in a small town. He was producing handmade pencils in quantity of 100 per month. His cost of production was $15 per pencil. He was selling them for $20 per one piece and was able to sell all that he produced every month. So his profit was $500. However, his price was way too high for poorer people and only rich ones could afford them. Poor people were pretty upset with the fact that they have nothing to write with. They used to say to Mark, "I would love to buy a pencil from you, but the price is too high for me." Mark knew that demand for pencils is high, but he was neither able to produce more of them nor lower the price. The only way to earn more was either increasing prices or lowering production cost. Mark chose easier way at first. In order to increase his profit, he announced that his pencils will now cost $22. It turned out that he sold only 70 of them in following month because some customers chose cheaper, less convenient quill pen instead of expensive pencil. Mark earned $490. It was less than before. He realized that there is no sense in this price strategy and decided that he is going to lower price of pencils by lowering production cost. He anticipated that it would help him to get more customers. He took a loan from a bank, and using the money he bought a machine from a distant country. The machine was way faster, way more precise, and used less material per pencil. Thanks to the machine, his productivity went up and he was producing 200 pencils per month instead of 100. Total cost of production was $10, so Mark was able to lower the price to $15 and he was selling all produced pencils at that price. His profit increased to $1,000. He quickly paid the loan and his quality of life increased significantly. Now we can point out some lessons from the story. First of all, Mark, throughout the whole story, did everything to increase only his own income. He wasn't worried about poor people who couldn't afford to buy his pencils. He didn't lower the price because he was a philanthropist, but because the solution was more profitable for him. At first, he wanted to increase prices, but he lost part of his customers and earned less than before. Afterwards, after lowering prices, he didn't lower his profit of $5 per pencil. This shows us that his drive to earning more wasn't hurting anyone. In fact, it was just the opposite. Because of his will to earn more, he found the way to produce more and cheaper, and by that he was able to reach greater number of customers. The side effect of his idea was higher wealth for the whole community. On the free market, prices are falling because of higher productivity. Peter Schiff, in his book Why an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, wrote that before the inception of Fed, prices in USA were falling steadily throughout almost 150 years, just because of higher and higher efficiency of production. Those who are afraid of bloodthirsty capitalists should realize one important thing. The only thing the capitalists can do to us without government assistance is to offer us his products. We, as a customers, can buy it or not. The capitalist will earn only if he would offer us a good or a service that we want in decent price. He's going to do that faster and more effective when he won't be interrupted. Our rising standard of living will be a side effect.
So that is for the video of law of supply and demand. I hope you all understand about it, fully about the concept. So next, we will go truly about the supply and demand concept and what it is actually. So the key concept in law of supply and demand, there are 4 basic concepts in it. First, if the demand increases and supply remains unchanged, a shortage occurs, leading to a higher equilibrium price. Second, if demand decreases and supply remains unchanged, a surplus occurs, leading to a lower equilibrium price. Third, if demand remains unchanged and supply increases, a surplus occurs, leading to a lower equilibrium price. And lastly, if demand remains unchanged and supply decreases, the shortage occurs, leading to a higher equilibrium price. So what does it actually mean by equilibrium and disequilibrium? We will look further details into what it is actually. Let's go. So what are equilibrium and disequilibrium? The equilibrium is actually the price at which the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. Meanwhile, for disequilibrium, it's a situation where internal and or external forces prevent market equilibrium from being reached or cause the market to fall out balance. So that's all about equilibrium and disequilibrium. Let's go further details into what it is mean by excess demand and excess supply. Let's go. So what I actually mean by excess demand and excess supply? Okay, excess supply is the situation where the price is above its equilibrium price. The quantity willing supplied by the producers is higher than the quantity demanded by the consumer. Meanwhile, for excess demand is the situation where the price is below its equilibrium price. The quantity supplied is lower than the quantity demanded by the consumer. So for a better and more understanding about what is actually excess demand and excess supplies, let us look at example here. Example with graph. So this graph shows the quantity of gasoline sold in per gallon. So as you can see from here, this is the demand and supply for gasoline. The demand curve D and the supply curve S intersect at the equilibrium point E with a price of $1.40 and a quantity of 600. The equilibrium is the only price where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. At a price above equilibrium, like $1.8, quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded, so there is excess supply. At a price below equilibrium, such as $1.2, quantity demanded exceeds quantity supply, so there is excess demand. So as you can see from the graph, at, at the top of the graph shows the excess supply, or we call it as surplus, and at the bottom of the graph it shows the excess demand of excess demand, or called as shortage, and the intersection between demand and supplies at the middle, which show the equilibrium price, and above the equilibrium price is what we call uh, excess supply, and below equilibrium price what we call excess demand. So that's all for the topic for introduction to engineering economy, macroeconomics and microeconomics, and the fundamental concept of demand, supply, and price. So next, my teammates will present about their topic, and that's all from me. Thank you.
Next, I will talk about organization economic theory. What is organizational economics? Organizational economics is a branch of applied economics and new institutional economics that studies the transactions occurring within individual firms, as opposed to the transactions that occur within the greater market. Organizational economists study how economic incentive, institutional characteristics, and transactions cause influence the choices made within firms and the structure and market performance of firms. Organizational economics can include theories from several different streams of economic thought. These include agency theory, transaction cost economics, contract or property right theory, theories of the firm, strategic management studies, and theories of entrepreneurship. Theory and research in organizational economics often incorporate insights, concepts, and methods from disciplines other than economics, too, including psychology and sociology. Courses in organizational economics are usually taught at the graduate or doctoral level. Understanding organizational economics. Organizational economics is useful in developing a firm's human resource management policies, determining how a firm should be organized, analyzing the size, scope, and boundaries of the firm, setting appropriate compensation, pay, and incentive, assessing business risks, and making, analyzing, and improving management decisions. Next, agency theory. What is agency theory? Agency theory is a principle that is used to explain and resolve issues in the relationship between business principals and their agents. Most commonly, that relationship is the one between shareholders as principals and company executive as agents. Understanding agency theory. An agency, in broad terms, is any relationship between two parties in which one, the agent, represents the other, the principal. In day-to-day transaction, the principal or principals have hired the agents to perform a service on their behalf. Principals delegate decision-making authority to agents. Because many decisions that affect the principal financially are made by the agents, difference of opinion and even differences in priorities and interests can arise. Agency theory assumes that the interests of a principal and an agent are not always in alignment. This is sometimes referred to as the principal-agent problem. By definition, an agent is using the resources of a principal. The principal has entrusted money but has little or no day-to-day input. The agent is the decision maker but is incurring little or no risk because any losses will be borne by the principal. Financial planners and portfolio managers are agents on behalf of their principals and are given responsibility for the principal's assets. A lessee may be in charge of protecting and safeguarding assets that do not belong to them. Even though the lessee is tasked with the job of taking care of the assets, the lessee has less interest in protecting the goods than the actual owners. Areas of dispute in agency theory. Agency theory addresses disputes that arise primarily in two key areas: a difference in goals or a difference in risk aversion. For example, company executive with an eye toward short-term profitability and elevated compensation may desire to expand a business into new high-risk markets. However, this could pose an unjustified risk to shareholders, who are most concerned with the long-term growth of earnings and share price appreciation. Another central issue often addressed by agency theory involves incompatible levels of risk tolerance between a principal and an agent. For example, shareholders in a bank may object that management has set the bar too low on loan approvals, thus taking on too great a risk of defaults. Next, transaction cost economics. What is transaction cost economics? The transaction cost theory states that the goal of any organization is to minimize costs associated with transactions. Therefore, the organization will either choose to manage these resources externally or internally, depending on transaction costs. For instance, the theory predicts that organizations will internalize most transactional activities within hierarchies when these costs are high. On the other hand, organizations would prefer to outsource the activity when the costs are low. It is because paying an external source to perform the activity would be cheaper. According to this theory, all organizations encounter expenses with market transactions. Depending on whether these costs are high or low, organizations sometimes favor internal or in-house hierarchies or favor external markets as a structure for their economic governance. A third governance structure, known as relational or hybrid, is an intermediate mechanism combining the other two. Example of practical application for this theory. A company needs to hire 20 clerks for its new office. It can either recruit the clothes through its internal HR department or outsource the recruitment process to an external recruitment firm. Either way, the company would have to pay certain money associated with the recruitment. It would either have to pay salaries to those working in its internal HR department or pay a fee to the external recruitment firm. Whether the recruitment process is completed internally or externally will depend on which of these costs is lower. If staffing an in-house HR department is cheaper in the long term than hiring an external recruitment firm, the company will complete the process internally. The opposite will be true if outsourcing is the more affordable option. Next, property rights theory. What is property right? Property rights define the theoretical and legal ownership of resources and how they can be used. These resources can be both tangible or intangible and can be owned by individuals, businesses, and governments. In many countries, including the United States, individuals generally exercise private property rights, or the rights of private persons to accumulate, hold, delegate, rent, or sell their property. In economics, property rights form the basis for all market exchange, and the allocation of property rights in a society affects the efficiency of resource use. Understanding property rights. Property is generally owned by individuals or a small group of people. The rights of property ownership can be extended by using patents and copyrights to protect scarce physical resources such as houses, cars, books, and cell phones. Non-human creatures like dogs, cats, horses, or birds. Intellectual property such as inventions, ideas, or words. Other types of property, such as communal or government property, are legally owned by well-defined groups. These are typically deemed public property. Ownership is enforced by individuals in position of political or cultural power. Property rights give the owner or right holder the ability to do with the property what they choose. That includes holding on to it, selling or renting it out of profit, or transferring it to another party. Acquiring property rights. Individuals in a private property rights regime acquire and transfer in mutually agreed upon transfers, or else through homesteading. Mutual transfers include rent, sales, voluntary sharing, inheritances, gambling, and charity. Homesteading is the unique case. An individual may acquire a previously unowned resource by mixing his labor with the resource over a period of time. Examples of homesteading acts include plowing a field, carving stone, and domesticating a wild animal. In areas where property rights don't exist, the ownership and use of resources are allocated by force, normally by the government. That means these resources are allocated by political ends rather than economic ones. Such governments determine who may interact with, can be excluded from, or may benefit from the use of the property. Next, we go to market condition for perfect competition. Market conditions. Characteristic of a market into which a firm is entering or into which a new product will be introduced, such as number of the competitors, level or intensity of competitiveness, and the market's growth rate. Market conditions are typically divided into three major groups, which is perfect competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. Perfect competition market. Perfect competition is a situation market which buyers and sellers are so numerous and well informed that all elements of monopoly are absent and the market price of a commodity is beyond the control of individual buyers and sellers. Under perfect competition, there are many buyers and sellers, and prices reflect supply and demand. Also, consumers have many substitutes if the goods or service they wish to buy becomes too expensive or its quality begins to fall short. New firms can easily enter the market, generating additional competitions. Companies earn just enough profit to stay in business and no more, because if they were to earn excess profits, other companies would enter the market and drive profits back down to the bare minimum. Perfect competition is a market structure in which the following five criteria are met. First, all firms sell an identical product. Second, all firms are price takers. They cannot control the market price of their product as all is based on pure supply and demand. Third, all firms have a relatively small market share. Fourth, buyers have complete information about the product being sold and the prices charged by each firm. Fifth, the industry is characterized by freedom of entry and exit. Example of perfect competition: marketplace. First, all shops are selling vegetables that they produce on their own. Second, customers can browse the shop and will know if a trader has raised prices. All traders cannot raise their prices, as doing so would result in customers running away to other shops. Finally, each trader has one shop, almost equal market share. A trader can join in by renting a space and can leave when he no longer wants to set up shop.
Next, I'm going to talk about market condition for monopoly and cost-benefit analysis (CVA). Market conditions for monopoly. What is monopoly market? A monopolistic market is a theoretical condition that describes a market where only one company may offer a products and services to the public. A monopolistic market is the opposite of a perfectly competitive market in which an infinite number of firms operate. In a purely monopolistic model, the monopoly firm can restrict output, raise prices, and enjoy supernormal profits in the long run. Why monopolies are created? While government usually try to prevent monopolies, in certain situations, they encourage or even create monopolies themselves. In many cases, government-created monopolies are intended to result in economies of scale that benefit consumers by keeping costs down. Utility companies that provide water, natural gas, or electricity are all examples of entities designed to benefit from economies of scale. Imagine, for example, the cost to consumers if 10 competing water companies each had to dig up the local street to run proprietary water lines to every house in town. The same logic holds true for gas pipes and power grids. In other cases, such as with the government policies that govern copyright and patents, governments are seeking to encourage innovation. If inventors had no protection for their inventions, all of their time, effort, and money spent writing books, recording songs, and conducting the research and development to create new drugs to combat disease would be wasted when another company who steals the idea is able to create a competing product at a lower cost. How a monopoly market works. The monopoly that sets the price and supply of good or service is called the price maker. A monopoly is a profit maximizer because by changing the supply and price of the good or service it provides, it can generate greater profits. By determining the point at which its marginal revenue equals its marginal cost, the monopoly can find the level of output that maximizes its profit. Monopolistic market generally consists of only one seller controlling the production and distribution of a good or service. There are typically high barriers to entry, which are obstacles that prevent other companies from entering the market. Potential entrants to the market are at disadvantage because the monopoly has a first mover advantage and can lower prices to undercut a potential newcomer and prevent them from gaining market share. Because there is only one supplier and firms cannot easily enter or exit, there are no substitutes for the goods or services. Therefore, a monopoly also has absolute product differentiation because there are no other comparable goods or services. Features of monopoly market. First, the product has only one seller in the market. Second, monopolists possess information that is unknown to others in the market. Third, there are profit maximization and price discrimination associated with monopolistic markets. Monopolies are guided by the need to maximize profit either by expanding sales production or by raising the price. Fourth, it has high barrier to entry for any new firm that produce the same product. The monopolist is the price maker. It decides the price which maximizes its profit. The price is to determine by evaluating the demand for the product. The monopolist does not discriminate among customers and charge them all alike for the same product. The Microsoft monopoly is one of the examples of monopoly market. In 1998, an antitrust suit was filed against Microsoft, accusing the company of having a monopoly over the personal computer market and web browser integration. The company was also accused of making it exceptionally difficult to uninstall Internet Explorer and use a competing browser on their computers. Microsoft was ultimately found to have a monopoly over operating system, and ruling called for the company to be divided in half. However, the case was eventually settled and US Department of Justice abandoned the requirement to break up the company. Next, we are going to talk about advantage of monopoly market. First, research and development. Monopoly companies enjoy a supernormal profit. The company can invest this profit to fund high capital research projects to bring more innovative products to the market. In a long term, successful research will pay the company higher profits. Second, improve efficiency with economies of scale. The monopolistic firm can gain lower run average costs by exploiting economies of scale. For example, it is not practical for a small firm to enter into rail infrastructure industry. This kind of industry requires initial capital with expertise. It may be efficient to have a single large-scale company handles such kind of projects at a lower cost. Third, improve innovation. Pharmaceutical companies invest heavily in producing new drugs because of monopoly rights they get with patents. Because of patents, the pharmaceutical companies have certainty of getting returns to cover the initial capital invested. This kind of innovation will benefit society. Almost all pharmaceutical companies invest a large portion of supernormal profit in research and development to make new drugs, which any other firm will not able to do. Number 4, continuous development to benefit the society. Companies that benefit from monopoly power are considered as most effective and dynamic. Most of these companies do continuous development to bring more product to the consumers at a very low cost. As an example, Google benefit from a certain monopoly in the search engine industry. Google is continuously improving its platforms to uplift the user experience day by day. Number 5, international competitiveness. If a firm has a domestic monopoly, the firm has a great advantage to expand its business internationally. The company can invest more in the international market with the good profits they earn in the domestic market. Number 6, support loss-making services. Government or community-related services can support loss-making services from the supernormal monopoly profits. As an example, railway companies usually have a monopoly. This company enjoy a supernormal profit from the peak hour services, but this will be offset from the late running services, which is loss-making, so that the railway companies can cover their services around the clock. And lastly, number 7, build up cash reserve for difficult times. Monopoly companies have more chance to pile up the cash reserve for the supernormal profits. They can utilize the profits to support them to survive in difficult times. As an example, from 2020 to 2022, the COVID pandemic has impacted most businesses around the globe. The companies that had cash reserve could easily overcome and survive this situation. Next is disadvantage of monopoly market. First is high prices. A monopolist firm is the sole provider of the entire market output. Hence, the monopolist can charge a higher price than a competitive market. Monopolist firm can increase the price without worrying about the competition, since no competition is available in monopoly market. Second, diseconomies of scale. Monopolistic firms try to put much output into the market as they could because due to the no competition in the market, large companies will experience production process becoming less efficient after a specific point in production output. The company will experience an increase in average per unit cost when they start to produce an additional unit of output beyond a certain level. This is known as diseconomies of scale. Number 3, no product alternative for consumers. Consumer will be dissatisfied because there is no product alternative available for them. Only one choice is available in the market, despite whether it is up to the quality and within the customer's expected price range. Number 4, less innovation and product improvement. Monopolist firms will not be motivated to to innovate and product improvement since there is no competition. This will be a disadvantage for the consumers since the same level of experience will be continued in the long run. Number 5. Pay low prices to suppliers. Monopoly firm can take the approach to pay low prices for their supplies since these companies has the entire market control. As an example, some leading supermarkets has a monopoly in their market. It was noticed that farmers complain about the monopoly power of large supermarkets, which receive a low price for their supplies. Number 6. Lower wages to their employees. Monopoly firms have entire market control in their hand. Hence, they could not worry much about internal employee well-being. They could get an approach to low salaries of their employees. And lastly, number 7, dissatisfied consumers due to lack of output. Due to the economies of scale in large firms, monopolistic companies will try to produce at the optimal level to keep the average product cost at minimum level possible. Sometimes, this output cannot be adequate to satisfy the entire market. Consumers will be dissatisfied due to the scarcity of the products in the market. Next is cost-benefit analysis or CBA. What is CBA? CBA is a systematic process that businesses use to analyze which decision to make and which to forgo. The CBA sums the potential rewards expected from a situation or action and then subtracts the total cost associated with taking the action. Some consultants or analysts also build models to assign a dollar value on intangible items such as the benefits and costs associated with living in a certain town. Objective of CBA: to ascertain the soundness of any investment opportunity, provide a basis for making comparisons with other such proposals. Process of conducting CBA: when performing a cost-benefit analysis on a project, it's important to analyze a comprehensive list of expenses and positive outcomes the project will create. So first, direct costs. Direct costs are purchases that a business make that directly relate to the creation of its goods and services. These costs can include material purchase, employee salaries, and equipment or tool rentals. Number 2, indirect costs. Indirect costs are other expenses that help keep the business or company operating, including insurance, facility rental, and utility costs. Number 3, intangible costs. Intangible costs are costs that companies cannot easily quantify. These costs can include customer satisfaction, employee morale, or overall productivity. Number 4, potential risks. Potential risks are any challenges of issues that a company might face during a project or after the project completion. This can include other direct or indirect costs, such as spending more than the company expected, and intangible costs, such as loss of business or profit. And lastly, number 5, opportunity costs. Opportunity costs are the loss of potential benefits or profit from making one decision over another. For example, if a company decides to sell some property, they might be missing out the potential profit from renting the property on a monthly basis. There are two techniques in CBA, which is annual cost method (ACM), and present worth method (PWM). ACM is used when a company needs to purchase an asset with a certain function but has multiple choices of similar assets to choose from, where these choices all have unequal lives. PWM is used when a company needs to purchase an asset with a certain function but has multiple choices of similar assets to choose from, where these choices all have equal lives. Now, we are going to watch a video to better understanding about CBA.
Cost-benefit analysis. This is Dave. Hello.
Dave is a high school student in his senior year. While Dave is a good, hardworking student, sometimes he also loves to relax and have fun. Dave's friends invited him to go to the premiere of Super Space Monkeys 2 on Sunday night. The problem is, Dave has a test on Monday he needs to study for. Bummer.
So, what should he do? He can apply economic concepts. Wait, hold on. Economics? Isn't that all about money? Let's explain. Our world is incredibly vast, and we are provided with resources like time, energy, materials, labor, natural resources, and many more. However, this amount is finite. Our resources are limited. Conversely, our wants are unlimited. We want things like TVs, clothes, rubber ducks, video games, music players, cows, toasters, bunny slippers, cars. The possibilities are infinite. And yes, even going to see a movie and getting a good grade can be considered wants. But if we have limited resources and unlimited wants, then how do we ever meet our wants? The answer is, we can't. And that's where economics comes in. Economics, the study of how individuals, governments, firms, and nations make choices on allocating scarce resources to satisfy their unlimited wants. So basically, economics is all about making choices. We can't fulfill our unlimited wants, but we can try to meet them to the best of our abilities. What rational decisions can we make to maximize our satisfaction or utility? To do this, we can utilize cost-benefit analysis. Out of the alternatives, we can weigh out the costs and the benefits. There are 5 basic procedures to keep in mind. 1. Identify the resources being allocated. 2. Consider all available alternatives. 3. Compare the advantages and disadvantages of each option. 4. Narrow down the choices. And 5. Evaluate the opportunity cost of each decision. So, back to Dave's scenario. Should he have that late night date with his textbook and notes? Or should he have a fun evening with his friends? Let's apply a cost-benefit analysis.
Dave's first option is to stay home and study for the exam. The benefits are that he could potentially score higher and he'll save some money. The costs are that he'll miss out on a night of fun and he won't get to see the movie. The second option is to go to the movies. The benefits and costs are the opposite of option 1's. He'll have fun, but he might do poorly on his exam and he still has to spend $9 on a movie ticket. After much thought, Dave concluded that his education had higher priority, and after all, he can always watch the movie later. Cost-benefit analysis is not only useful for choosing what to do on Sunday nights, it can be applied to many decision-making situations in the personal and professional context so that we can make smarter choices in a world full of options.
Next, we are going to talk about advantage of CBA. First, focus on data-driven decision making. CBA often focus on facts and data to help companies and businesses make decisions more easily and free them from personal bias or preference. Examining the exact expenses to the business will occur and if those expenses will lead to beneficial results can help businesses identify if the choice is good for them to make. It also can provide project managers with fact-based evidence to support their new project ideas and effectively present them to company executive. Number 2, discovers hidden costs. Analyzing the total cost that a project will create can help companies discover any hidden costs or expenses they might not have known about previously. These types of costs can include opportunity costs, such as potential loss in profit from choosing one project over another, and intangible costs like the temporary loss of customer satisfaction from focusing additional resources on the project itself. However, the cost-benefit analysis can also help companies discover hidden benefits, such as increase the employee satisfaction, which might increase productivity and quality of work. Number 3, make some decision easier. Though some decision made with cost-benefit analysis might need some careful consideration, the process often simplifies a lot of decisions for companies and businesses because they can clearly see the correlation between the expenses and project results. If you know that a project will generate more cost than benefits, you can quickly determine that the project might not be worth your company's time and resources. Alternatively, if you see that the benefits are greater than the cost, you can more efficiently determine how those benefits will affect your company in the long term. And lastly, number 4, provides a competitive advantage. Cost-benefit analysis can help companies develop an advantage over competing businesses because it can help them quickly create innovative ideas and determine how they can stay relevant in current market. Continuously generating new ideas and performing a cost-benefit analysis on them can help companies stay competitive and create products and services that are more attractive to potential customers. Using cost-benefit analysis can also help them avoid any projects that might provide them with various challenges or issues causing a lot in profit or competitiveness. Next is disadvantage of CBA. Number 1, unpredictable variable. Though cost-benefit analysis can help companies make better informed decisions, it can sometimes be challenging for them to predict certain variables such as customer demand and material prices. When conducting a cost-benefit analysis, it is important to take unpredictable variables into consideration and understand how the results of your project might change dependent on different output. For example, it's beneficial for businesses to see what their different benefits might be for a project if customer demand is high, low, or unchanging. Number 2, not as effective for long-term project. Cost-benefit analysis is a great tool for companies to use for shorter projects, but it can become a little risky when using it for long-term projects due to unpredictable variables that have a higher probability to changing over time. When using a cost-benefit analysis for longer projects, it's important to understand that the potential risk for the project might be higher and they would be for a short-term project. Consider making a list of all the risks of variable changes to project might encounter, then develop strategies to help overcome those challenges if they present themselves. And lastly, number 3, requires extensive data. When conducting cost-benefit analysis, it's beneficial for companies to have an extensive amount of data to ensure they're making the most accurate prediction. If a company doesn't have enough data for the analysis, it can lead to false information and possibly cause businesses additional challenges in the future. As you perform a cost-benefit analysis, it's important to communicate with different company departments and talk with officials who can help you find all the information you need and understand if the benefits are truly greater than the cost. That's it for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Lukman Hakim Bizambi, and I'm going to explain about return on investment (ROI) and payback period in engineering economy. So, what is return on investment? Return on investment (ROI) is a ratio of the profit or loss performance metric made during a financial year that is used to assess the profitability or efficiency of an investment or to compare the profitability of several comparable investments. ROI aims to quantify the amount of return on a certain investment in relationship to cost of the investment. ROI is calculated by dividing the benefit or return, or we call profit or loss, of an investment by the investment cost. A wide number of situations call for the usage of ROI, including determining whether or not to engage in the purchase of a firm and assessing the outcomes of real estate transactions. For the concept of ROI, first, compare investment returns and costs by constructing a ratio or a percentage. Second, ROI ratio bigger than 0%. Investment return more than it costs. And lastly, many competitors, many choice factor of investment, higher ROI is better choice. So for the calculation of ROI, the formula is ROI equal to net return on investment divided by cost of investment multiplied by 100%. And this equation equal to second method, which is ROI equal to FBI minus IBI divided by cost of investment multiply 100%, where FBI equal to final value of investment, IBI equal to initial value of investment. If an investment has a net positive return on investment, it is probably worthwhile. However, this indication might aid investor in excluding or picking the best possibility if other chances with greater ROIs are there. Investors should also stay clear of negative ROIs as they indicate a net loss. For example, Amin invests $1,000 in company A in 2010, and then he sold his share for a total of 1,200 a year later. To calculate the return of his investment, divide his profit, which means 1,200 minus by 1,000 equal to 2,000 by the investment cost, which means 1,000 for ROI of 200 divided by 1,000 or 20%. And then Amin also invest 2,000 in company B in 2011 and sold his shares for a total of 2,800 in 2014. The ROI of Amin's holdings in company B would be 40%. And if we compare these two investments, it is clear that company B holding is twice as large as his 20% ROI from his company A. And investment in company B was the wiser move. And then ROI also have its benefit and limitation. The benefit of ROI is It is generally easy to calculate. Few figures are needed to complete the calculation, all of which should be available in financial statements or balance sheet. And second, it is comparative analysis capability. Because of its widespread use and its ease of calculation, more comparison can be made for investment returns between organizations. And lastly, it is measurement of profitability. ROI relates to the net income for investment made in a specific business unit. This provides a better measure of profitability by company or a team. For the limitation of ROI, first, it is inability to consider time in the equation. On the surface, the higher ROI seems like the better investment, is but an investment that takes 10 years to produce a higher ROI pales in comparison to a second investment that takes just 1 year to produce a slightly lower than ROI. And second, ROI calculation can differ from business because there are different equations to calculate ROI. Not every business uses the same one, making the comparison between investment irrelevant. And lastly, manager might only select investment with larger ROIs. Some investment with lower ROI may still increase the value of the business, but suboptimal choice can be lead to poor allocation of resource. For the more understanding, let me watch video from the YouTube about return of investment.
Mark made two smart investments 3 years ago. One, he invested $400 in a rare coin and just sold it for $1,000. And two, he bought one share in company A for $100, collected $30 in dividends, and just sold that share for $250. For the sake of simplicity, we'll assume there were no commissions or other fees involved. To quantify his success, we could simply calculate the profit in each case. So 1, we subtract the $400 cost from the $1,000 price he sold at, and realized he made a $600 profit on his coin. 2, we subtract the $100 cost from the $250 he got when selling plus $30 through dividends. After drawing the line, he made a $180 profit on his share. Was the coin a better investment because he made more money? Well, let's not forget that he also paid more for it. To also account for that, we calculate the so-called return on investment, or ROI, by dividing the profit by the amount which was invested. In other words, 1, for the gold coin, his ROI was 600 divided by 400, or 150%. 2, for the share, his ROI was 180 divided by 100, so 180%, which is better than the gold coin ROI. Please understand that each method has its limitations, including ROI, because, for example, it doesn't factor in how long you held an investment. 180% ROI might be great if you held for 3 years, but awful if you had to wait 30 years. Always understand what and why you're measuring.
And next subtopic is payback period. So what is payback period? The term payback period in capital budgeting refers to the period of time required to recoup the funds expended in an investment or to reach a break-even point. Simply put, it is amount of time it takes to recover the cost of investment. So let's go for introduction. The payback period is crucial there since people and businesses invest money primarily to be reimbursed. In general, an investment are more appealing the faster its payoff is. Everyone may benefit from knowing the payback period, which can be calculated by dividing the initial investment by the typical cash flows. Cash flows. Investor, financial expert, and business frequently utilize the payback time as a way to estimate investment returns. It aids in calculating how long it takes for an investment original expenditure to be recouped. Before making any adjustment, this statistic is helpful, especially when a quick assessment of a potential investment initiative is required. So for the formula, there are three formulas for calculation in payback period. So for the first formula is payback period equal to P minus N divided by P and plus NY equal to 1 plus NY minus N divided by P in the unit of years, where NY is the number of years after the initial investment at which the last negative value of accumulative cash flow occurs, and N is the value of N equal to value of cumulative cash flow at which the last negative value of cumulative cash flow occurs. P, the value of the cash flow at which the first positive value of cumulative cash flow occurs. This formula can only be used to calculate the soonest payback period. That is, the first period after which the investment has paid for itself. For the second formula, payback period equal to initial investment divided by cash inflow per period. If the cumulative cash flow drops to a negative value sometime after it has reached a positive value, thereby changing the payback period, this formula cannot be applied. This formula ignores value that arise after payback period has been reached. Another formula for payback period is shown as below, which is formula 3. And for the third formula, when the cash inflows are uneven, we need to calculate the cumulative net cash flow for each period and then use the following formula, which means payback period equal to A plus B divided by C. In the above formula, A is the last period with the negative cumulative cash flow, B is the absolute value of cumulative cash flow at the end of the period A, and C is the total cash flow during the period after A. So look at the example, and for the solution, as you can see, the cumulative cash flow sign shift from negative to positive in year 4, indicating the expense, the total of $200 at time 0 and $250 invest in year 1, would eventually be paid by profit. The payback phase so begins sometime in the third year. Simply divide the 120 cumulative cash flow in year 3 by 220 to arrive at the percent cash flow in year 4. The payback period is therefore 3 minus 120 divided by 220 equal to 3.55 years. Keep in mind that the payback period might be stated starting at the start of the production. Due to the fact that manufacturing starts in year 2, the payback period in this instance for the aforementioned example is 3.552 equal to 1.55 years after production starts. Let's look at a video of the payback period for more understanding.
How does the payback method in investment analysis work? How to calculate the payback period? Find out all about the beauty of the payback method as well as its shortcomings. The payback method asks a very simple central question. How many years does it take to recover the initial investment? Let's calculate the payback period for project A. In year 0, today, we have a cash outflow of $1,000. The brackets around the number indicate that it is a negative, a cash outflow. Over the course of the project, we have $1,600 worth of benefits, cash inflows, in total, split evenly over 4 years of $400 each. It's fairly easy to calculate that the payback period is 2.5 years. $400 of benefits in year 1, plus $400 of benefits in year 2, plus 6 months worth of benefits in year 3, making up the final $200, at which point the total investment equals the total benefits. What if we have multiple projects in our company that we want to force rank? We only have $1,000 of investment money to spend. Which project is, financially speaking, the most attractive? In total, for the full 4 years combined, each of these 3 projects has $1,600 worth of cumulative benefits, but the timing of these benefits varies. Applying the payback method can help. We already calculated the payback period for Project A at 2.5 years. Project B has a payback period of 1.8 years, $600 in year 1, and, assuming we have benefits evenly spread over the year, $400 of the year 2 benefits. Project C has a payback of 3 years, $200 in year 1, $300 in year 2, $500 in year 3. The payback method does a good job here. It recognizes that time is money. Earlier benefits are more valuable than later benefits. Project B is the most attractive. However, the payback method, while nice and simple, has a crucial blind spot. It answers the question, how many years does it take to recover the initial investment? Nothing more, nothing less. So if Project A has an investment of $1,000 and 4 years of $400 benefits per year, and Project D has an investment of $1,000 with 5 years of $400 benefits per year, the payback method tells you that both projects are equally attractive at a payback period of 2.5 years. This is where more sophisticated methods like net present value or internal rate of return have to come in to provide a calculation. Or just plain common sense, as any entrepreneur with skin in the game would intuitively and correctly choose Project D over Project A, without having heard of any of the more fancy terms. I hope you enjoyed this short explanation of the payback.
So that's all for me. Thank you.